My name is Riley Grace. I'm 28 years old, and I just got kicked out of my parents' house. I'm sitting in a motel room that smells like mildew and old coffee, with rain still dripping from the sleeves of my coat. The cup in my hand is something I made when I was 19. It's not perfect. The glaze cracked along one side and the bottom wobbles just enough to make tea spill if I said it wrong. But I kept it because it was the first piece I made that felt like me. A few hours ago, I was sitting across the dinner table from my father, showing him a business plan I spent 3 weeks putting together. I thought if I presented it just right, if I sounded confident enough, they might understand why I wanted to quit my job and build something of my own. But instead, he stood up, looked me straight in the face, and told me to be gone by morning. My mom didn't say anything. She just cleared the dishes like she always does, as if pretending nothing happened might make it all go away. The hardest part wasn't their reaction, it was how unsurprised I was by it. I used to work at a financial firm in downtown Omaha. Office on the 22nd floor. A view of nothing but gray buildings and traffic lights. Every morning felt like slipping on a life that didn't fit. But I stayed because it made them proud. Because security was more important than happiness in our house. Because saying I wanted to make ceramics full-time felt like announcing I was planning to join the circus. Now here I am, holding a crooked little cup, wondering what comes next. I have $246 in my wallet, a maxed-out credit card, and no plan beyond tonight. But even sitting here in damp clothes, with my whole life unraveling around me, I don't feel like I made a mistake. There's this voice in my head, soft but steady, that keeps repeating the same thing. Maybe this is what starting over looks like. Maybe the fall is the first step in the climb. I grew up in a beige 2-story house on the west side of Omaha, where lawns were trimmed like math problems, and nobody parked crooked in the driveway. My dad wore the same kind of tie every day, dark blue with tiny white dots. And my mom color-coded the grocery list. Our world ran on efficiency, like a train that couldn't afford to stop or reroute. My father worked at a regional bank and believed strongly in numbers, structure, and making sense. He had this quiet pride in being predictable, as if surprises were weaknesses disguised as emotion. My mother managed operations at a hospital and ran our household like a project plan with quarterly reviews and tight deadlines. I don't think they meant to raise a child who didn't fit that mold. But from the time I could hold a pencil, I didn't draw inside the lines. I sketched wild shapes on napkins, painted with my fingers on the garage floor, and made animals out of flour and water when we ran out of clay. They thought it was a phase, something I'd outgrow like the glitter phase or the fairy wings I insisted on wearing to preschool. But it only deepened with time, and their tolerance turned into confusion, then quiet disapproval. The only person who never looked puzzled by me was my grandmother, Nana Joan. She lived in a little bungalow 3 blocks away, smelled like lemon hand cream, and always had something baking. On weekends, she'd pull out an old cardboard box of clay scraps and say, "Let's see what your hands want to say today." She made space for me, not just on her kitchen table, but inside the rhythm of her life. She didn't care if the mugs I made were crooked or if the paint dripped down the side. She'd hold up every lopsided creation like it was already part of something beautiful. I used to bring my pieces home and leave them on the counter, hoping my parents would notice. Sometimes they did. But mostly, they just asked if I'd finished my math homework. My mom once said, "It's lovely, but you know this won't help on your college applications." I nodded and put the bowl back in my backpack. When I got to middle school, they signed me up for coding camp instead of art class. They said it would give me options. Stability. I wanted to scream, "I already know what I want to do." But I didn't. I just went along, folding myself smaller so I wouldn't take up too much space. By the time I got to high school, my hands itched during tests and froze during presentations. But every time I held a lump of clay, the rest of the world quieted down. Nana kept reminding me that some people are born to shape what doesn't exist yet. I held on to that, even when everything else around me pushed back. It wasn't that I didn't love my parents. I just felt like a guest in their version of success. And for most of my life, I thought maybe that was enough. Maybe love meant making yourself smaller so other people wouldn't have to stretch. But part of me was always reaching. Not for rebellion. Just for room. During college, I was the perfect finance student on the outside. The one who never missed a lecture or skipped an internship. But at night, when the campus fell quiet and most people were asleep, I transformed my dorm room into a tiny pottery studio. Under a single lamp, I rolled and shaped clay. My fingers stained and sore, making small bowls, mugs, and ornaments I sold online under the name Nana Clay. I kept the shop a secret from my family, afraid they wouldn't understand or worse. I think I was wasting my time. Each sale was a quiet victory, a small rebellion I carried in my pocket, along with my textbooks and lecture notes. Even when exhaustion weighed down my eyes and my body ached, the thrill of crafting something real and tangible made everything else fade away. Balancing finance classes and pottery wasn't easy. I'd sneak out late at night to package orders, rush to ship them before morning, and then drag myself through another day of meetings and exams. The two worlds felt miles apart. One was rigid, filled with numbers and rules. The other was messy and alive, where I could pour emotion into every curve and glaze. I often wondered if I was fooling myself, if this double life was sustainable. But each glowing customer review, every heartfelt message from someone who loved a piece I made, fueled a quiet hope I couldn't ignore. That hope whispered that maybe one day, the clay could be more than just a secret. Keeping the shop hidden was hard, but necessary. I was afraid my parents would pressure me to quit or dismiss what I was building as a childish hobby. So Nana Clay became my invisible world. A place where I was free to be myself without judgment or expectation. Those late nights, hunched over a spinning wheel or carefully painting designs, were some of the most alive moments I'd ever had. While my classmates studied spreadsheets and memorized formulas, I was learning to listen to my own hands, to trust what they wanted to create. That trust grew quietly, filling the spaces where doubt tried to creep in. I didn't know then that the foundation I laid in those nights would become the ground beneath everything I was about to build. But deep down, I felt like I was starting to find my own way out of the maze my family had mapped for me. And that felt like the bravest thing I'd ever done. That evening I sat down at the dinner table with a folder full of spreadsheets, sales reports, and a business plan I had worked on for weeks. I wanted them to see that I wasn't making a rash decision, that this was more than just a hobby. I told them I was quitting my finance job to focus on my ceramics full-time. Instead of support, I was met with disbelief and anger. My father slammed his fist on the table, saying it was irresponsible and reckless. My mother looked down, avoiding eye contact as if I had just shattered something too fragile to fix. The argument quickly escalated, words sharp and unforgiving. I tried to explain how much this meant to me, how every piece I made was a part of who I was, but they only saw failure, a wasted future slipping through my fingers. At one point, my father stood up and said I could leave by morning if I was serious about this path. The finality in his voice hit me harder than any argument. That night, I packed my things, knowing the life I had known was ending. That night, I checked into a small motel room, numbered 9. The carpet smelled musty and the curtains hung heavy with dust. But it was shelter from the cold rain still dripping from my coat. I sank onto the edge of the bed, every muscle aching from the day's weight. I pulled out a crumpled lottery ticket from my pocket, the one Nana Joan and I had bought every Friday for years. She used to say sometimes miracles come in numbers, even if you don't believe in luck. Holding that faded piece of paper felt like holding a thread back to a world where someone believed in me. The room was dark except for a flickering neon sign outside the window casting pale blue light across the cracked ceiling. The steady patter of rain was the only sound keeping me company. I felt utterly alone, but somewhere deep inside, a quiet hope was stirring a small light I wasn't ready to let go of yet. I woke up early the next morning, my fingers trembling as I pulled out the lottery ticket from my worn wallet. The numbers matched every single one of them. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks. So I double-checked on the lottery website and then called the office to confirm. The voice on the other end calmly told me my ticket was indeed the winner of $81 million. My breath caught, and my heart pounded so loud I could hardly hear anything else. I sat frozen on the edge of the bed, unable to move. As disbelief and joy collided in a chaotic storm inside me, even though the news was overwhelming, I knew I had to keep it quiet. I signed the back of the ticket, just like Nana Joan had always said, locked it away, and decided not to tell anyone until I had a solid plan. In that moment, the quiet room felt both heavy with possibility and fragile as glass. I knew I couldn't do this alone. So the next morning, I approached Gladys, the motel manager with the kind eyes and calm voice. She listened without judgment when I explained I needed someone trustworthy to help me manage unexpected finances. Without hesitation, she connected me to her nephew Marcus, a financial advisor with a reputation for discretion. At Marcus's small office, I sat across from him holding the signed ticket, my hand still shaking. He walked me through setting up anonymous trust accounts and legal protections designed to keep my identity private. Every form I signed felt like building a shield, a way to keep control over this new life I was beginning. I resisted the urge to splurge or change everything at once. Instead, I withdrew just enough to secure a small apartment and buy essential tools for my craft. The rest was carefully invested, tucked away for stability and growth. This wasn't luck coming easy, it was a responsibility I was ready to own quietly and thoughtfully. I found a small apartment in Asheville, with sunlight pouring through big windows and enough space for a work table by the wall. As I unpacked my pottery tools and carefully arranged jars of glazes and brushes, I felt a quiet calm settle over me. Naming the brand Joan Clay was my way of honoring Nana Joan, the woman who believed in me when no one else did. The name felt like a bridge between past and future, a reminder that every piece I made carried a part of her spirit. Setting up the studio wasn't about fancy equipment or perfect organization. It was about creating a space where I could listen to my hands and let the clay speak. Each shelf, each brush, each lump of raw clay was a small act of healing, a soft beginning that held a world of possibility. That apartment and studio became my sanctuary. Here, away from expectations and judgment, I was free to make imperfect things that told honest stories. Joan Clay wasn't just a brand. It was a promise to myself that I would keep creating, no matter what came next. One quiet afternoon, I decided to film a short video showing how I shape a cup from a lump of clay. It was meant to be simple and honest, just a glimpse behind the scenes of my studio life. I posted it to Instagram without much thought, expecting maybe a handful of views from friends or local supporters. But within hours, something unexpected happened. The video started gaining traction, shared by strangers who found beauty in the slow turning of the wheel and the soft splash of water. Comments flooded in, people asking where they could buy the pieces, telling me how much they loved the process. Orders began pouring into my website, more than I had ever seen before. Just when I thought it couldn't get any better, a well-known influencer posted a photo wearing one of my earrings. She tagged my account and wrote a few words about how handmade things carry stories you can feel. Suddenly, my website crashed from the traffic. I sat staring at my phone, disbelief and joy flooding through me. It was a moment of validation I had been waiting for, a sign that my work could reach beyond the quiet corners of my small studio. The momentum didn't just change my business. It changed how I saw myself. For the first time in a long time, I believed that what I was doing mattered and that maybe, just maybe, this dream was real. I hadn't seen my brother in years when I spotted him across the gallery filled with soft light and ceramic art. He paused mid-step, eyes widening as he recognized me standing by the display of my newest pieces. We talked quietly, the silence between us easing just enough to let words slip in. During the conversation, I learned his girlfriend was a recipient of the Joan Foundation grant, the small program I had started to help young artists without family support. Hearing that connection stirred something inside me, a reminder that our paths might still cross in ways I hadn't expected. It was a gentle thread weaving us back together after so much distance. The evening ended with warmth neither of us rushed to explain. The old walls between us felt less solid, replaced by something softer and real. For the first time in a long time, I felt the door to family opening. Not with a slam, but with a quiet hope. The day my parents first visited my apartment, the air was thick with quiet unease. They stepped inside slowly, their eyes scanning the simple wooden shelves, lined with clay vessels and tools scattered with care. I didn't rush to fill the silence or explain anything. I poured tea and placed it gently on the low table between us, letting the warmth speak where words might fail. Their gazes flickered from one piece of pottery to another, lingering on the imperfections and the stories they held. The room was filled with more observation than conversation. Each of us holding pieces of the past we weren't ready to unfold. Despite the tension, I didn't feel the need to prove myself or justify the life I had built. I hoped they would see the quiet confidence in the space I created. The calm that comes from following a path only I could understand. That moment wasn't about reconciliation. It was about opening a door just enough to let in possibility. My father's eyes landed on the bracelet around my wrist. A delicate piece with smoky gray stones wrapped in thin silver wire. He asked quietly about its story. A softness in his voice I hadn't heard in years. It was the first time he acknowledged my work as more than a hobby. My mother surprised me next by mentioning she had started a pottery class at the community center. She said it hesitated, but wanted to understand the world I had chosen. Those small admissions didn't come with grand apologies, but they spoke volumes. I told them I wasn't looking for forgiveness yet. What I needed was respect for my choices and for the person I had become. I set clear boundaries, explaining that control was no longer part of our relationship. Healing, I realized, didn't require big gestures. It began with quiet changes and honest intentions. It was a Sunday evening when we all gathered around the table for the first time, in what felt like forever. My mother brought her homemade apple pie, the kind she used to bake when I was a kid, filling the house with a warm cinnamon scent. My father carried a bottle of wine and a stack of newspapers, while my brother showed up with his girlfriend and a shy smile. The food was simple, but the atmosphere was heavy with unspoken words and cautious hope. We shared updates about our lives. My brother talked about his new job, my mother about her pottery projects, and I spoke softly about the foundation and the studio. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that felt like progress. For the first time in years, I felt peace settle over me like a gentle tide. My family hadn't changed overnight, but they were trying to meet me where I was, and I was learning to accept their imperfect attempts. The night ended with quiet laughter and the sense that maybe, just maybe, we could build something new together. Have you ever been told your dream wasn't real? That what you loved to do could never be a job or a future? I want you to know you're not alone in that feeling. So many of us carry the weight of those words. The doubt from others that tries to bury our hope. But dreams don't need everyone's approval to be valid. Sometimes all it takes is one person believing in you, one small spark to light a fire that changes everything. I hope you'll share your story in the comments. Whatever it is, however hard it feels to say out loud, remember what my grandmother told me: you don't need everyone to see your light. You just need one spark. Keep that spark alive,